Now, we're going to talk a little bit about what's on my mind today. What's on my little mind today, I should say. So, I'm not going to talk like a mule, I hope. Anyway, we talk about today's Torah reading and we call it Balak. That's what we named it, Balak. It takes its name from a non-Bnei Israel and no relation to the Jewish people or the Bnei Israel, but he was a Moabite king. So he was the king of Moab, along with so many others in history who wanted to end the Jewish people or the people Israel in the desert wanted to. And since then, of course, we still have people trying to end the Jewish people, even here in the United States, even in the hallowed halls of our most respected or used to be respected universities. But the Torah reading takes place at the end of the 40-year stroll that Bnei Israel was taking from slavery in Egypt to freedom. From Egypt to the land flowing with milk and honey. Anyway, you know what you get when you have land flowing with milk and honey. You get a lot of flies and a lot of bees, right? But that's what it was, the land flowing with milk and honey. The reading begins as Bnei Israel is walking in a northerly direction along the eastern edge of the promised land. So to get there, Bnei Israel needed to cross a land that was controlled by the Moabites. Balak and the Moabites were afraid that Bnei Israel would outnumber and take them and wipe them out, just take it over. They were afraid of that. Remember, don't forget there were millions of people, according to the Torah, that were walking through the desert. And Midian didn't have millions of people living there. So here's they come. And what are they going to do? What would you think? Put yourself in King Balak's shoes. Take yourself and put yourself in his shoes. So believing that he couldn't win militarily, he really didn't think he could win. Not against over 3 million people. So Balak summons a well-known sorcerer or prophet, a very powerful man called Balaam. And this man was considered to have been very powerful and had the ability to make curses and have the curses come true. So they were falsifiable. You could tell whether they were going to come true or not, right? So, yeah, he was going to pay him good money for this. Balak had a very strong belief that Balaam's curses, or perhaps more correctly, the casting of some sort of spell, would make it so that the people of Israel could easily be defeated. He really had a lot of faith in that. So while Balaam finally arrives in Moab, he does so after a very complex series of interactions. But even after he agrees to the demands of Balak, Balaam is unable to curse Bnei Israel. He opens his mouth and praises come out. Not only does he fail at casting his evil spell, he would just open his mouth and beautiful, beautiful words would come out about Bnei Israel. Just beautiful words. Balaam winds up offering words of blessing instead of curses. Oh, in many ways, Balak's story reminds us about when Moshe confronted Paro prior to the Exodus. Like Paro, Balak feels threatened by the sheer numbers that make up Bnei Israel. I mean, 3 million or more, maybe even closer to 6. Remember, the Bnei Israel didn't travel alone. There were other people that came with them from Egypt who didn't want to stay in Egypt as slaves. Remember that. So the key is that the fear is not over an actual threat expressed by the people of Israel. but in both cases, it was merely perceived. Both Paro and Balak feared Israel was going to attack them and take them over. Now, it would be amazing, but they couldn't rise up and rebel against them because they didn't have enough people to do it. Now, remember that today, the people of the Arab nations are not worried that Israel's going to take them over. They know Israel has no desire to do that. They just don't want them there at all. Get out of here. Another similarity between the two stories comes from the way the two rulers were defeated. Paro believed that his magic and ability to hold the people in oppression would ultimately prove to be more powerful than the power of God. Yep, Paro believed he was a god, and the people did too, that were under his control. They believed he was a god, not the God. But he thought that our God could never beat him. And so it's obvious that during each of the 10 plagues, the punishments showered on Mitzrayim whittled away at his ability to rule. And he believed it would make him appear as a mere mortal and not the God that he believed he was and that the people believed he was. But remember, as the plagues went on, the people begged him, his advisors begged him to get rid of the Jews, send them away, the Bnei Israel, I should say. They're not Jews in the desert yet. So anyway, Balak also believed in magic, just like Paro. He was convinced that there was real power held within the magical sorcerer called Balaam. So Balaam, as was Paro, Balak was defeated by the power of God, not by Bnei Israel, who did not even lift a finger. They didn't even know this was happening. They were just sitting there around the fire and in front of their tents. And all of a sudden, this Balaam guy comes and gives them blessings. They had no idea this was going on. Also, like Paro, Balaam is exposed as a mere mortal who cannot do or say anything that God does not like. And he wasn't part of Bnei Israel. God's power extended well beyond Bnei Israel, as you could see from the Song at the Sea. Anyway, the Torah reading teaches that no matter how much people think they are gods, they are not. Those individuals who perceive they have supernatural powers are capable of producing results through offering an incantation have in fact no divine powers at all. None. You know, I have to tell you, as an aside, this reminds me of more than once I have done a funeral for people and the loved ones were mad because I couldn't bring them back to life. I never claimed to be a sorcerer or a prophet, and they couldn't do it either. So, um, it's an interesting thing how people get a little irrational when they think somebody else has power that they don't have. Anyway, during the time of the Torah, it was common to believe that any number of people were gods. Before that and during that time, even after that time, obviously. One that got into people believed there was one man who they thought was a god, at least the son of God. Anyway, the religious revolution of Bnei Israel clearly showed the world that there is only one God, just one. The revolution showed that this one God created all that there is. This revolution showed that this one God alone controls everything that happens in the world and always will. There's no end to this. As long as there's a world, God controls it. And the world will be here as long as God wants it to be here. Anyway, the similarity in the way Paro and Balak were defeated are just one example of how God rids the world of hostile rulers. I should say two examples. And it is the symbolic defeat of outworn and outdated religious beliefs that gods can be represented by people. They can't be. People aren't God. That said, I find it exceptionally curious that nowhere during the story of Balak and Balaam do we find any mention of Moshe. I just want to point that out. Nowhere in that story is Moshe mentioned, and there's a good reason for it. It's even more curious that the internal conflict over Balaam's ability to bless or to curse is carried out between two non-members of Bnei Israel. Isn't that something? This is extremely unusual. In fact, it is Balaam, not Moshe, who tells Balak in Bamidbar chapter 24, verse 13, in the Torah reading, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord to do either good or bad on my own. Only what the Lord speaks can I speak. That's what he told him. It's interesting. Interestingly, even more, Balaam becomes one of several characters we find in our Tanakh who, while not part of Bnei Israel, fully recognize and come to accept the power and sovereignty of God and feels compelled to do God's wishes. Balaam takes on the universality offered by our magnificent God and the teachings of our rich Jewish religion. And to be sure, much of humanity who are not Jewish have come to learn that there is only one God over all creation and what has come on since. It is critical that as Jews we must accept, welcome, and be ever so proud of the fact that those who are not within the covenant of the Jewish people today also recognize and relate with our God as we do. The key is that belief isn't enough. You need much more than belief. Observance is not enough. Keeping kosher, going to shul, doing all the observances that we're taught, that's not enough either. The reality is, if we do not act ethically and responsibly toward our God, toward God's mitzvot, and most importantly, towards all our fellow human beings, Jews and non-Jews alike, we are not living as Jews are supposed to live. That was in the Haftorah today that Peretz Halevi read to us. Never forget it. If you don't live the life the way God wants us to, we can observe all we want. I know people, and I'm sure you do too, who appear to be very observant Jews and are not nice people at all. That's not the way it's supposed to be. It's better if they're nice people and they're not as observant as they are. I mean, observances, prayers, and behaving are all important. You just can't do one and not the other. But if you don't, even if you do everything right according to all the observances, you don't drive on Shabbos, you keep kosher, you have payas, you whatever. Even if you do all of that, everything, and you sit in prayer and studying, and you're not nice as a person, forget about it. No good. And we know that. So perhaps it is that Balaam could see how we, as Bnei Israel, were supposed to live, how we were to love our neighbors as ourselves, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they stood for, regardless. It didn't make any difference that his prophecy had been included in our synagogue liturgy. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. That's what he said. That's how he tried to curse us. We all know it. We Jews say it every morning in our opening prayers. I don't know if you know it or not, but every Jew is supposed to say this in every opening prayer and in the evening services. In English, the prayer says, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob?" Meaning, how good are you as individuals? Your dwelling places, O Israel. How good are they, O Israel? Meaning the nation, all the people Israel. Jacob, when he says, whenever the Torah talks about Jacob or Yaakov, after Yaakov's name is changed, they're telling us about each of us individually. And whenever it says Israel, they're talking about us as a group. And I know you know it. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. I know you know it. Because if I started to sing it, you'd probably join in. I'm going to test that and see how many of you can join in. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and of course, Am Yisroel Chai.